Looking to make a difference with your shopping? Visit communitypayitforward.us. Select the mission or cause you want to support and scan the QR code. You have two options. Click the first link and browse our giving partners, or use the second link to tell us what you need, and we'll find the right partners for you. Shop with these partners and keep your receipt or invoice. Next, click a picture or simply upload a picture of your receipt to the portal in every form, adding your name and email address. Your purchase now turns into a donation to the mission you've chosen. Community Pay It Forward shares your business story with those in need of your services to rally support for those who need us all. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Monday. Welcome to Footprints Forward. My name is Zach Clayton. I am the president and founder of Community Pay It Forward, Community Dare to Care, and the PAC channels. Again, I'd like to welcome everyone to the show. Today, we have a very difficult story that we're going to be listening to with a wonderful, wonderful outcome. A wonderfully beautiful lady who overcame a very, very difficult situation in order to create that path for others who are in like situations. We'll get to her in just a moment. We are 1 week away from Memorial Day. Please remember, thank your veterans. They gave up, some gave up all for us to do what we do. No matter what you do in a day, think we could be in another country where it's restricted and we wouldn't be able to have the freedoms that we have. I also want to make mention, we are cutting it close on getting onto or into, Community Impact Magazine. We need your stories. Please, if you would like to be featured on a PAC channel episode, and in the magazine, and in the year-end coffee table book that will be out next July, and also sponsor a nonprofit or a charity organization, have them on the podcast, and have them in the coffee table book, I need you to contact me immediately. We are, once again, running really short on time. And the best way to get a hold of me is by sending a text to 970-909-0751, 970-909-0751. You can also send us an email at communitypayitforward. Wait a minute. You can't send us an email there because that's our website. Community Pay It. Let's try this one instead. It's footprints at communitypayitforward.us. Footprints at communitypayitforward.us. Once again, this is a very, very difficult show. We do talk about mature audience. Moms, if you're happen to be watching this, or dads, if you're watching this and you've got kids around, you might not want them in the room. There is talk about stalking and abuse that happened, but this is truly a very, very important show. And if you've got a child that's coming up on dating age, this is a great show to have. If you are in the dating scene, there's a lot of things that have gone on since, and especially since I was a kid. But things have changed. And for some reason, unfortunately, we have a lot of people out there who have lost that thought in their head on what boundaries are. So Meg went through a very, very difficult time. And she is now taking her story and turning it into coaching. So I would like to once again welcome Meg to the show. And again, mom, dad, if you have kids in the room, maybe this isn't the best episode for them. If you have teenagers in the room, though, maybe, but you check it out first. You be the judge. We've met a lot of really, really, really good people with a lot of really good messages in the little over the year that we've done this show, Footprints Forward. I met Meg in a networking event, a Colorado networking event, and I was hearing her story. And the ironic thing, I don't want to say the funny thing, the ironic thing was is that I met Meg and I heard her story right after we talked to Deb a couple weeks ago. And as you guys all know, Deb was somebody, or her ex husband tried to have her killed. And she was raped and she was hurt in many, many ways. And 2 days later, I ended up meeting Meg, and I just realized, Meg, I still owe you an introduction to her. But I am proud to introduce everyone to a lady with another very, very serious story that has created something very, very beautiful. Meg Grett-Pratt, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me here today.
Well, no problem. I love what you're doing because it is something, you and I were talking about it. You and I just met really for the first time in a serious note about 40 minutes ago, and we've been talking ever since. But I love what you're doing because you and I both agree that, things are a lot different now. I mean, when I was a kid, when I was in the dating scene, things weren't as scary as they are now. I couldn't imagine what kids have to go through now,
Yeah.
but you know, is that just a sign of the times? Is that why are things so much different? Is it because we're more aware, or why are things so much different for me than they were for my sons?
I think the biggest answer I can, or the best answer I can give to you is that it's always happening. People just don't talk about it. And so now people are talking about it and people are letting those numbers come out. People are saying those 16 to 24-year-olds are affected at the highest rate of any population by stalking and violence. And if you have all these stalking victims and then 50% of the women say that they were stalked before they were age of 25, it starts making people thinking, oh, it does happen to other people. Because I think the other part we believe is that it only happens to certain people. I mean, when I give speeches, sometimes I talk about people. I say, close your eyes and imagine a victim, and people think, oh, okay, and they get this image in their head because I used to have an image in my head. I had this image of the person who had to be like drug addict or the alcoholic, and they had to be married, and they had all these kids, but they lived in the poorest part of town. And the truth is that violence can happen to anybody. It happens to men and women. It happens to all ages. It happens to the rich, the poor, the popular, the unpopular, your ethnic background. It's happening to anybody, and it's just people realizing and people hearing that it's not just happening to them anymore. It's not just happening to this small population or those images we have in our head of those type of people who are being affected by it. Um, and I think that there's a lot of more campaigns now that people are talking about teen dating violence and teen stalking and how much is affecting that population. And so now we know, like, oh wow, I would never imagine it's happening to kids because when we grew up, maybe it didn't happen to us. Although every day I meet somebody, I tell my story or they'll say, "What do you do?" And they say, "Oh, in high school I was abused by my boyfriend." And I think, it was happening then. People just didn't talk about it, and especially I think in rural towns, because people think it's a small town. This isn't happening here. Uh, but unfortunately, it happens everywhere, and it happens to just about anybody.
Think one of the other things that you and I did talk about just a little bit ago, that people don't understand when they see that vision is that abuse is not just physical.
Right.
Abuse is mental. Abuse is there's abuse that people have to go through all the time. You and I mentioned the financial abuse. Look, if I love your tagline. Please share your tagline with us.
Well, what's the tagline?
The what we were talking about, if with if something seems wrong.
Oh, if there's something that seems wrong, if it feels wrong, probably is wrong. And I always say, what I try to say is, if it's not, if this isn't normal, this isn't okay. That's the kind of the message I give to people a lot when I give them a scenario. This is not normal. This is not okay. One of the biggest that we just talked about was people asking like a digital abuse. People think, oh, it's just digital. It's just it's through the computer. How sad, how hard can this be? How scary can it be? But if someone every day asks you, let me see your phone, let me see who you've been talking to, let me see who you've been texting, let me see where your voicemails are from. That's a form of digital abuse, which is a form of dating abuse or relationship abuse. But it's not normal and it's not okay. And so letting people know that these things, just because it's not physical, doesn't mean it's not abuse.
Look,
So,
the true fact of this is, and this is to all you guys and girls out there, the truth is that if there's no trust, there's no real relationship. If
no,
somebody cannot trust you, you're not in a good relationship, because there's just going to be problems there. If you
right,
can't trust the person that you're with 100% to go out and do what they're going to do, then you're not in a great relationship, you know.
right. I
So,
mean, I think we've all been in those jealous relationships, or you've been jealous. I don't think there's anybody who can say they've never been jealous.
oh
But
no.
there's extreme jealousy, the jealousy where you can't even look at the waiter in the eye because, oh, you must be flirting with them. Are you sleeping with that person? Those kind of jealousy that people have to recognize. This is not okay. This is not normal. This is not okay. You should be either addressing it, but along with trust comes that communication thing. And then when I teach healthy relationships, I always talk about communication. Everything comes back to communication. If you can't trust someone, if you talk to them, you get it across. Someone understands, it alters their behavior. They're better. Great. Communication saved it. If you communicated like, this is my boundary, this is like, I can't take you not trusting me, or you attacking me every time I look up at the waiter, and someone continues to do that, and they built the trust, they've broken your trust because they don't respect your boundaries, and they're not listening to you. They're not respecting your communication or your opinion. So I think a lot of it, people think, what else goes into a healthy relationship? I'm like, well, communication for one. If you can't communicate with a partner, or you're afraid to talk to your partner, that's really, a big red flag, is that this is not a healthy relationship for you as well.
Meg, your story is very important to your mission. And while it's a story that I hate having you repeat, it is very important. So, can you tell us the story behind Meg? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I think when I first started sharing my story, I was sharing with counselors and family and friends, and all I did was cry because that was my life and that was the trauma I was continuing living in. And now there's something about telling my story that makes me feel empowered, and it feels like I'm helping people with my story. So
Hmm?
the story goes in a nutshell is that I was beginning to work with a man, and we started dating within a few months of working with him, and within 6 months, and actually within the first few months, I didn't see it until the 6-month mark, he got physical. And that was when my eyes actually opened. There's a lot of things that had been happening that weren't healthy all along, but I hadn't seen him. And I'd been compensating, like, oh, he's stressed. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. And when someone punches you in the face, you kind of go, oh, wait, this is not for me. This is not okay. I'm not going to be a punching bag. And that night, he revealed basically that he'd had hidden cameras in my cars. He'd had hidden cameras in my homes. He'd been like listening to my devices, he'd been in my social media, he'd hacked my phone. And so he had, basically seen me give someone a ride, 5-minute ride. It wasn't even a big deal, but he exploded over that. And he wanted to kill me for that. That night, if my phone hadn't rang, he was strangling me at the moment when my phone rang, and he just jumped up because he knew it was that guy. Like, I'm going to see what that guy wants. Um, After that, like, I tried to get away from him for probably about a year, and every time, every 3 months, he'd threaten or figure out some way to get me to kind of come back. Like, oh, if you don't come back, I'm going to hurt your son, or if you don't come back, I'm going to kill you. It doesn't make sense now that I would go back for those reasons, but when you're dealing with it, you believe that that person, that's what's going to happen. And so, about every 3 months, I went back for every time. Every time it got worse, drugged me. The first time we got back together, I have stitches down to the bone in my chin from that occasion. Um, and he just continued to stalk me, breaking into my homes, putting in cameras. I lived in safe houses all over the state, moved several different times. And after it was daily torture. Your phone doing whatever he wanted to do, turn it on, turn it off, turn the camera on, take pictures, um, following you around. If you went outside your house, you could see someone there. At the very end, probably the very end was in March of 2020, and that was the 7th year of this happening on a daily basis. And I was looking up at the drone, and there was a drone sitting there that had a camera on it, and I had made the decision that I was no longer going to participate in this game. That there, he was no longer gonna. He was not gonna quit. So how was this ever gonna end? Like, I was a shell of a person. I had no mental capacity anymore. Anxiety, PTSD, you name it. That little list went behind my names. And COVID hit the next morning after I decided, like, I planned to end my life. COVID happened the next morning, and the TV came on, and all I was enthralled with was like, "Oh, I don't want my family or my kids. I don't want anybody else. No one else is gonna die." Like, the plan was for me to be the person, but no one else. And so I like set up headquarters at our house, and my kids came home from school and work, and uh, you know how it went. Every day that was all that happened. That's all anyone talked about, and everyone was trapped at home. And about 2 or 3 weeks in, I started realizing that my phone messages weren't read in the morning. It wasn't like it was important to look at my phone messages because everyone who I loved was already with me, but things weren't happening. No one's breaking into your home anymore because you're occupying your home. There's more than just me here. There was lots of people here. And probably about May, I realized, okay, I was feeling much better. Like, I wasn't crying. I actually smiled. I could take a deep breath, which I hadn't been able to do that for years. And my family said, something's changed with you. You like we recognize that you're a way different person, like, is it just this COVID thing or what's going on? And by December that year, I decided, like, I thought I was strong enough to go back to work and go do something. And I didn't want to go back to conference planning or sales or all these different things that I had succeeded at before that. I had to help people, and I had to decide, like, how what happened to me that led me into that decision, like led me into that life. And the biggest thing I realized is that I didn't recognize the early signs. I didn't recognize the emotional abuse, the financial abuse, the isolation, all those things that people say, "Oh, he didn't hit me." I didn't recognize till that December that when he hit me, well, that all the other stuff had been happening. And so I started sharing my story on podcasts, and people said, "Oh, your story is so powerful. We need, you should talk. You should tell other people with this." And so I decided to form Dating Tips by Meg, and it's a nonprofit that we speak to people, especially high schools and college students, to try to get them to realize what's healthy and what's unhealthy, and how to get help if you're in that relationship, and letting people know that they're not alone, but there is help out there. And so that's kind of me in a nutshell what happened. And then last year and a half, just been working on. I have a social media where I post videos and posts about tips to stay safe, what to avoid, what's right, what's not right, those kind of things. And so that's kind of where we've been working on for the last year and a half, and then looking at just expanding into schools and community events and conferences, just to share the word with as many people as possible.
Let me ask you this. How difficult is it for you to for someone to warm up to you? Maybe somebody who's got some of this going on. How difficult is it for them to come to you and warm up to you and be able to trust you? Because they they're living in this life where there is no trust. So that building that trust has got to be a very, very difficult hurdle, right?
It is and it isn't. So I also volunteer on 2 crisis lines,
Right.
the victims crisis lines, and you have those people who calling in, they're calling in crisis. Someone won't give their name, and just listening and believing, and listening to them and saying, "I hear what you're saying, like, I understand that." And either and not you don't wanna share your story so much with them, but letting them know, like, "I've been through that. I understand what you're going through, and, like, I believe you. What else? What do you wanna do? What's your magic wand wish to make this better?" Or, what so it's kind of amazing, like, I'll meet with people, do the networking one-on-one, and I'll just expect that we're gonna talk about what I do, and then we'll talk about what they do. I kinda talk about why I do what I do, and people about 90% of the time, someone will come back with their story and let me know what's been happening with them or what happened to them, where they're at now. I get referrals all the time for people, like, saying, "I think she just needs to hear someone understands what's going on with her." So, it hasn't been as difficult as the warming up part. The hardest part is warming up to the schools, not so much the victims, and being able to share it with them, like, just listen to them and understand their experience is real. I think that's probably what the advantage I have over some of the other speakers is that I made it through. I'm a survivor versus a lot of people are reacting to something that happened to their family or happened to a loved one. And I'm like, I am that person. And so I know how hard it is what you're going through. And I know how all these walls are coming up and how no, you feel like you're so alone. And I think that that's one thing the victims just need. They just need someone to say, I believe in you. I hear what you're saying, and I know it's hard, but we can get through this.
The school's afraid to talk about this because they're afraid to bring it up. Are they afraid to talk about this because um they're they're afraid to I don't, look, I guess I akin it a little bit to maybe like sex ed that, they're afraid to talk about it because it's something that, is difficult to talk about. But this is really something that, there should not be any fear to have you come in. There should be, a boasting. There should be a, hey, you know what, kids, sit down, listen to this, take this in.
Yeah. You think so? You think that the people I mean, I've gone everywhere from, okay, we can eliminate most of the story, but it's the story that gets people to stop and listen. And
Mhm.
then they believe they you get credibility for what like, okay, this person has some knowledge about it. And then you see you see those heads nodding in the audience. And so you know that people are going through it. I've had the chance to I actually talked to a group of middle school girls about in March, and I was really worried, like, how well I relate to them, because they're just not quite dating, but most of them are dating. And it was amazing how many people are raising their hands and talking and sharing their experience and sharing, what's going on in the middle school world. And it just makes me say, why won't the high schools talk about it? Why don't they want to? The colleges are definitely different. They're more liberal because their parents aren't as involved in what the curriculum is and they bring in. But the high schools, I think they're afraid, like, they're gonna get sued, they're gonna, their kid's gonna come home and, like, maybe they're gonna recognize that you're not in a healthy relationship as a parent, maybe they're gonna call you out on something. I don't know what the big scary thing is for them, but it's like, just teach these kids this is a life, like, you're giving them all the tools to succeed, but if they run into one of these bad relationships and they can't recognize it, this will destroy everything they've been building. Like, as a grown woman, I know that I had this wonderful life going on, and it destroyed me down to nearly nothing of a person. And I thought I was a very strong person. I can't even imagine people who are just starting off in life. This is their first dating experience, and this is what happens to them. Like, what it's going to do to their lives.
I think you brought up a good point with the parents is that, I mean, look, if this is the way that mom and dad are, this is what, and then that's your first relationship, that is normal. And I think that growing from that normal to something different is going to be, you know, uh, I, I loved your answer about, maybe parents are afraid that they're going to find out that, whoa, our, our stuff's kind of screwed up as it is. So, um,
Right.
I know one of the things that we talked about that you like to caution people, and when I asked you, what did you need? Because that was exactly what it was. You know, I really, really want to make sure that we hear from someone who's went through this. And
Right.
your answer is very simple. Meg, what did you need from others?
I needed someone to believe me and to listen and to be there for me. I I had a very and I'll just thank them forever and ever. My mom, my kids shouldn't have been on their like level, but they believed, like they understood what was going on. But just having someone listen to you, not be, minimizing something. I think it's easy to say, like, especially if you know the perpetrator and not be like, oh, he could never do that. You just isolate that victim so much more. But someone saying, "I believe what's happening to you. I hear you. What can I do to support you?" And then keeping that confidence, because I think a lot of people, I don't say it's gossipy, but it's kind of it's a gossipy subject. People want to talk about it like, "Whoa, did you hear what happened?" And um, for me, it's just having those people who believed me and then like supported me. I mean, I had the opportunity, not the opportunity, I was mandated to see, an advocate very shortly after, he was arrested because of a restraining order, and I had no clue how bad the relationship was, and she had this little questionnaire, like 25 questions, and when she first started saying it, I was like, "Oh, how bad could it be?" 23 questions later, she's like, "You've checked yes to 23 of these things have happened in your relationship." And it was an eye opener for one, but it was also that she didn't go, "Can't really be that bad, could it? Are you really sure about these answers?" She believed what I was saying, and she knew that this was what my life was like. And it was a big relief to have someone who actually understood what was happening in your world and believed you. And so I think if you can do anything for someone, if someone comes to you, is to believe them, not minimize it, keep their confidence, and then the other thing is to let them they're being controlled by someone already, and to not control, like, what they say, because you wanna say, "Oh, I'm gonna take this, and we're gonna rip you out of here and do this and this." Let them lead you into the conversation. Let them lead what they wanna do and how they wanna do it, because also the victims know their perpetrator best. They know the abuser, like, "If you do this, he's gonna do this, or if I do this," it's a very dangerous time for people to break up with somebody. So don't assume people are not breaking up with them because they're just lazy or they're like, "Oh, she's so pathetic. Why won't she just leave this person?" There's usually a lot of reasons behind why people can't leave, just get up and leave immediately. And so being there and being supportive, even if they do go back, is really important.
Did talk about a relationship that I was in, and that was something that, I tried to be there when I could, but I could not understand the reason why she kept returning to, these situations. It was hard for me to understand. That's just a little bit of personal growth on that needed to be made on my part, to where I wouldn't walk in every time, go, pack an effing bag, we're leaving. You know,
Right.
um, you know, when you go in there full of piss and vinegar and think that you're doing the right thing, but actually what you're doing is you're probably making the situation a whole hell of a lot worse. If you're trying to make somebody make that decision, well, you're not probably, you are making it worse, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not every time you make it worse, but it's the overall thing that the person's been in this power and control struggle with someone else. That person's told them what to do, how to act, what to eat, all of these different things. And so if another person comes in, even if they're trying to do the right thing, but they're still telling that person what to do, they still have no control over their life. And so, like, little by little, I mean, even if you do rescue the person, maybe the next step is like, now what do you want to do? Now what do you want to do? So if I think you try to do the right thing, and it seems like the right thing to do is just save the person, get them out of that situation, because they're like, obviously sometimes people don't think, they don't know what they want to do at that moment. They're afraid, there's lots going on. All these things are going through their head to what they're contemplating, what would happen if I do leave. but you can still get back the power afterwards. You can still say, hey, we're out of this situation, this immediate situation at the moment. What else? What's next? What do you want to do? What do you see, as the next best step? Because as long as you don't continue controlling the whole time, I think that you're still being very helpful. You're still have the right intentions. Um, and then, in a situation like that where it's like in the immediate danger kind of thing, and you're probably putting yourself in danger doing that, there is probably the only thing you can do is say, pack your bag, let's go, you know. So, and you don't have the time to sit down and talk to them one on one by themselves and like give them the time to walk through all these steps. So, yeah, you do what you do and you try to do the best you can. And then if it's, you don't have to be expert, you've rescued them from that immediate situation. Maybe you call in the next person, an advocate. This is what's happening. What should we do next? How do I help this person best next?
We could go down this road all day long. We could go down this road all day long. It's very easy because it's something that personally is extremely upsetting to me. You know, I let's put it this way. When we were off air and when you told me your story the first time, I I told you right away that I'm proud of you. And I know that doesn't mean anything from a guy that you just met, but I was proud of you. The second time I heard your story, I felt pissed. I was so pissed at the guy for doing this to you, because it's just like, what kind of person, and I cleaned it up a lot when I just said person, does
Yeah.
this to someone else? What kind of person does this to someone else? And it's stuck in my head. And it's just, I don't understand a lot of this. But now I think what I really want to focus on for the last little bit that we've got together here, Meg, is tell us about what you're doing now. Tell us about Dating Tips by Meg. Tell us about how you're helping kids and adults, not just kids. You're
Right.
helping individuals make sure they are not you.
So, like I said, at the end of my relationship or when I was getting ready to recover, I looked back and said, what was I missing? What was the big thing? Like I was a I'm not saying this to be like boastful, but I was a smart woman. I had my head on my shoulders. I had raised kids. I'd been managers of, run corporations kind of thing. And I realized I just didn't know what these red flags were or the early signs of an abusive relationship were. Like in my mind, I thought it was just abuse, like physical abuse. And so breaking that, like thinking, how can I break that illusion? And so now I share my story and along the way, letting people know, like, here was a red flag. This was a red flag. These are ones I just, gladly walked right over. For some reason, I ignored them, thought that they weren't that bad. I made excuses for them. But letting people know what the early signs look like and that there's help. Like, I think people get trapped in that information that it's not that bad. He's not hitting me. All these different excuses you may have. But so letting people know they're not alone. This is happening. Emotional abuse is just as bad. I'm not saying just as bad, but to me, it took me longer to recover from the emotional abuse than it did the physical abuse. And, the bruises recovered. Even years later, some of the bruises finally recovered. But the emotional abuse is still in your head and you still think about these things and you still wonder, like, can I trust myself? So teaching people how to trust themselves, healthy relationships, red flags. And then because a lot of the years that were covered in the end were stalking, I do a lot with digital stalking and tell people, digital safety, online dating, safety, what to do if you think you're being stalked, what's the safest way to, do it. Because again, like I was just going to say one of the obvious things. If you found a hidden camera, what you want to do is rip it out, destroy that thing and be done with it, but there's your evidence. So it's very difficult, but it's like, okay, you find that device, take a picture, put a pillow in front of it, then call the authorities, like go through the proper channels. So giving people all those tips and how to stay safe, how to, what the smart reaction is versus the gut reaction sometimes. And then even in that I talk about gut reactions. Learn how to trust your gut. You know, as a kid, things come out, someone says do this, and you're like, the first thing that happens is your stomach gets upset. It's not just you stop and have a tummy ache at that time because you ate something wrong. It's your body telling you that it's not okay. you need to stop and think about what's next. Maybe this isn't for me, and that comes with human beings as well. Someone's very, I'm going to say this, he's very racist. It makes me very uncomfortable because I'm like, oh, I'm very anti racist kind of person. Like, I don't talk to people and like have names for people and that kind of thing. And I should have known because it made me uncomfortable really off the bat, but I wasn't listening to my gut. And so listening to your gut, trusting your gut, making the actions and knowing that there's help out there. And so that this other big thing in teaching is just that there's help. There's help nationally, there's help locally, there's your family and friends. There's help. You're not alone. And then with 1 out of 3 women and 1 out of 4 men experiencing this every day, it's you're not alone. And there are people who are experts and understand what's going on to you. And even if you think, oh well, I went back, they're not going to understand. Those are the people who really are going to understand because that's their field. They're the experts. They've seen this over and over again, and they know what it takes and how hard it is to get out of a relationship like that. So yeah. So speaking at high schools and colleges and community events and working with police departments, people who are training people to, recognize victims, recognize stalking, all those different people I work with right now.
What the what about if somebody says, "Well, I'm going to change this for this person." Isn't that kind of a little bit isn't that a little bit of abuse? Because if you're not good enough for a person, shouldn't that be like a red flag that, if you can't accept me for who I am, well, sorry. And I
Right,
don't need to joke about it, but it is true. Look, if you come into a relationship with me and my first thing is to look at you and say, you know what, I think that we can have a good relationship, but you need to stop doing this and you need to stop doing this, and you know how you like this, tough shit, you're not doing
right.
that anymore. That's
Wow.
not good. That's not a good relationship.
Right. People who love you who for who you are and not saying like, okay, you put the soap in the water every time. You need to change that. Those are little things. When people want you to change who you are and how you act and like those are things that you should be considering red flags. Like if people communicate with you, oh, I really hate that. Okay, let's say this for healthy conflict. I tell people I am a person when I have healthy conflict or I have conflict. I like to think about it because I know that the Italian side of me will tell people bad things or say bad things, and I don't really mean them, but if I don't get my space, that's how I deal with conflict. If I understand that and I communicate that and, like, the person who I'm in a relationship was like, "I need you to talk to me right away, like, I can't have you walking away from an argument." There's a compromise, and so they're not asking you to change, but to understand each other so that you can, better work together is one thing. But someone telling someone like, "Oh, you can't do this anymore, you can't do that anymore, you can't do this," or "You have to do this." It's not there. And I always tell people, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. You're not gonna be everyone's cup of tea. And you wanna find someone who really loves you for who you are, and it's a lot less work when you are who you are and someone accepts you for that person.
Somebody's trying to force you to leave friends or family behind
Mhm.
because they don't like them. Well, they don't need to be around you all the time. These are the
Right.
people that you've grown relationships with. These are people that you've grown comfortable with, and this is your circle. You can't depend on somebody else to build your circle. So just remember that. And if they're trying to force people out of your life who you've loved for a long time, that could be a
Is
setup.
isolation. It's one of the tactics. I mean, and I think the main reason people try to get those people out of your lives is because the only thing they want you hearing is their opinion and
Mhm.
what they think is right. And if you have anybody who loves you and they're like, well, that doesn't sound right, they could alter they can take away the power from that person who's like been kind of mind controlling you all this time. And so that's why they isolate you from family and friends who might, care more about you than what this guy's opinion is. And so guys or girls, opinion may be of you. And so yeah, definitely watch out for people who are trying to isolate you or make sure you don't have anybody else to rely on besides them.
Um, and I know that this could be a little difficult question to answer, but I'm just going to ask it anyway, just to make sure. You're on a first date with somebody. If they do blank, that should really be a red flag?
They do anything that makes you anxious, that should be a red flag. So they yell at the waiter, makes you kind of anxious,
Yeah.
like the behavior. They, you know, they say something like they say something very provocative to you that you're just like, oh my gosh, that makes you anxious. You know, there's so many things that the people could do to make you feel uncomfortable, but it should be one of those first things where you go, whoa, that makes me very uncomfortable. I'm If it makes you uncomfortable and that's the first date, there's no telling what the next escalation and all those different bigger things are going to be. I know that one of the first times I went out with that person, he yelled at like his wait staff and just went crazy on the wait staff. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it wasn't a big deal kind of thing. And it should have been for me going, oh, this is not for me. Like I don't treat people like this. I don't want to be with someone who treats people like this. And again, I walked past the red flag thinking, oh, he's stressed. Oh, he didn't really like this meal. Oh, it's an expensive meal, blah, blah, blah. But it made me very, very, very uncomfortable. And even when we were working together, before we started dating, he was a yeller and a slamming of the doors. And I don't do well with loud noises or people screaming just screaming because it makes me anxious. Like, what are you going to do next? And there was a red flag. And that was even before the relationship started. I should have been like, if this is how he treats other people, how do you think he's going to treat you?
I really didn't think that you would have much of an answer for that. I was thinking about it because you know what, the first date, you're always a little anxious anyway.
Right.
Maybe a little. There's a lot of curiosity, and I guess there's a difference between curiosity and oh, But
Right.
yeah, I mean, if there's something that makes you want to get away from this person, definitely.
Right.
I had never really thought I'd never given it much thought. Let's be honest there, but I'd never really given it any thought that, I mean, there could be something that happens in on the first date that would make things go like that. So yeah, that's
Right.
such great advice. So,
Yeah.
uh, you know, um, what what can someone do? What would you suggest they do if they're starting to feel uncomfortable and they just need to make sure that they are safe?
Well, depending on if you are in so on first dates, being safe, tell people then this sounds like a little bit of a covert kind of thing, but you have that friend, you always have someone who knows exactly where you're going. You keep your location on at this point in time, and you have that check-in call with that code word and say, oh, this is not working. A lot of times right now in restaurants, they'll have the bar or the bartender we can mention something and they know that you need a safe ride out of there or you're not feeling safe anymore. Um, in general, keeping safe is not to be in public, not to be in a private space with a person. Um, if you're like, trying to escape, I know when that first night, that bad night, guarding the door. It was one door of a condo, and all I could think about was how do I get past that door because I felt unsafe. But I'm like, I have no shoes, I have no keys, I have no phone. Um, but not being, putting yourself in that thing. And then if you are in a personal situation, being very vocal about the no. I mean, I did one of the other things I talk about is consent a lot and saying, people say no, take a no. People say yes, but their body's saying no. That's not a yes. But being very vocal, there's uh was a self-defense thing that says stop, back away. I don't want any problems. And at first it kind of sounds silly, but it startles people. And if you're yelling it loud enough, you know, other people can recognize it. Person kind of gets startled enough. They're like, okay, I don't want to do anything to do that. Um, the uncomfortable thing, and then if you can communicate, I think that they're probably if you're in a situation with someone that makes you uncomfortable, they probably are not the person that's going to hear you when you communicate either way. But you can always try communicating like I'm not comfortable with this. This is not, I'm not good with this. I want to leave, and be making things very clear. I know that we as people try to be people pleasers and we don't like to say no, even to, being the church potluck lady, it's like we don't say no. We'd rather be tortured ourselves than say no to somebody else. But saying the no and being very clear, this is a no. Uh, I'm not comfortable with, what's happening in the situation. If you can get to a friend or family or anybody in public, you use that as a, your safety buffer. And if people are bystanders, be brave enough to say, "Are you okay? You don't look like you're okay. Do you need help?" And if it feels like a situation you can't really get involved in, then go find someone else to intervene and help. Find an officer, find somebody else, security, campus security. Find someone who has authority to make things stop. But don't just give up just because you're like afraid to say no, afraid to speak up for yourself.
Like, what are the perpetrators? What are they going to do? What are they going to use to get you to come back?
Threats. A lot of them are threats. Threats that like I'll hurt your family, I'll hurt your pet, I'll hurt your kids. Um, I'll expose you. A lot of times these people made you do something you're uncomfortable with in the first place. And so I'll expose those pictures or I'll tell somebody that you're a bisexual or I'll tell someone you're homosexual. Like they have no problem making you out to be a bad guy or exposing your deepest secrets. I had recently had someone who said just wanted this picture so badly, and I'm like, I'm not doing it. I said, do you know how many times in a day or a week I tell people, do not sext. Like you do not know who you can trust. Once it's out there forever. And it was very hard to get that through. The person's like, "I've been threatened with something that I did, and I'm regretful, and I've learned from that mistake, and that's why I teach people not to do it anymore, or not to do it." And, you know, not feeding them in more information, especially in first dates. Don't give them too much information that they know so much about you that they have something to dangle over your head.
We
So,
we did talk about that earlier too. We as a human species, we tend to answer questions or give answers to questions not yet asked, and this is dangerous. You can't, um, you know, you can't give away everything and let people know about it. Pete, the perpetrators will spend a lot of time building up that weapon, won't they? You know, they'll convince you it's okay to do that thing that maybe you're not too comfortable with, and then they've got that in the bank.
right. Oh, yeah. There's always got, like, this game plan going. I don't know if they get a book in the beginning when you wanna be an abuser, but it's like they follow it to a T, like, and then we'll gather some information, and then we'll have pictures of this information, or we'll keep a text message of this information. Um, we'll have cameras installed, so we'll watch you do something that, you're ashamed of doing. I think that they do it and just kinda like I talked about physical, like, emotional abuse escalating to physical abuse. When they lose control of something, they bring out the next target or the next weapon. And if that weapon doesn't work, they bring out the next weapon. And then it just kind of escalates to, someone being physically assaulted. Like that's, your life and death part where you're like, "Oh, okay. That scares me enough. Maybe I'll behave again." Um, but yeah, I think that's what they set out to do in the very beginning. And I always wonder from my own experience, like, why did you do this to me? Like, why was I such a conquest, or why did this have to happen for so long? Did you set out in the beginning to just to destroy me? I have no clue still, but uh, yeah, I think you have to watch out for what you are giving them easily, ammunition, and kind of keeps those secrets closer to you. There's lots of things you can share with someone to get close to somebody without sharing your deepest, darkest secrets.
How difficult is it to be a mom now, knowing that this is a threat to your daughter? This is a threat to your son. How difficult is it to be a mother? And do your kids, knowing the situation that you were in, do they accept it, or is there times that they still sit there and go, "Mom, enough"?
Yeah. You know, my daughter was 9, my son was 18 when this first began, and I sadly, I mean, my daughter maybe not want me to share the story, but she said the saddest part is at one point because he was such a great like carnival dad because we both had kids, and on the weekends, certain weekends we'd have them. Um, that she actually thought he was a better dad than her real dad. Like he's so much fun, and all, and then to find out later what he'd done to me, she was just like so ashamed, like that she let him do that. I said, "What do you think happened to me?" I said, "I let him into our world. I made you trust him and believe him, and now I've seen how much he's hurt everyone, in my life." But being a mom, I think I've been very vocal. I'm one of those parents that are a little too honest with their kids. Probably, like, we have those conversations sometimes when they share stuff. I'm like, wow, okay, is my face doing that wow thing? Or I hope I'm just looking normal, because I want them to come to me with things like happen. And I know my daughter has been in the bad relationship, and communications helped her. I know that my son was in an abusive relationship with a girl, and she literally was gonna just do this to destroy his life because he wouldn't give up. She wouldn't give up what she wanted him to give up. And it was like, but being a mom, I'm very proud of what I like, where I've come from. And I have to say, I'm very thankful for the people that they kept supporting me. And even though I like screwed up majorly, they, they've always been there for me, and they're always there. I'm proud of you, mom, especially what I'm doing now. I'm proud of this. I'm so happy that this is happening for you. And um, I have some amazing kids that like understand, because now I have a daughter who's 21 and a son who's 30, and they back me 150,000% all the time about what I'm doing, and they help with their friends. I think my friend might be in a thing. Can you talk to her? So it's gonna come full circle. And you know, I have to say that I have a lot of shame and regret about what happened, because you tear people through like hell for 7 years. But I learned, and I'm on the other side now. I've learned this lesson, and all I can do is do the best I can nowadays. But my biggest priority always was, being a good mom to my kids, even when I was at the lowest part of my life. So,
Ironically, our kids are the same age.
oh
Um,
really?
yeah, yeah. Free turns 30 this year, and or just turned 30. And yeah, Justice turns 22 in July. So yeah.
Oh wow, yeah.
But yeah. Um, and you know, I like you, um, it I'm embarrassed of what I allowed my kids to have to deal with a lot of the
Hmm.
stuff that I've done before. I make it no secret that I was, I was going through difficult things, and I dealt with it wrong. I was an alcoholic. I was a bad alcoholic. Um, I'm one of those guys that I never wanted to finish second in everything. I mean, I smoked 3 packs a day. I
I,
I drank, and I mean I drank everything I could get I would start at 8 in the morning with screwdrivers, be on beer by noon, and still be drinking Captain Morgan's at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's just who I was. And I put my sons through that. And I know that now they look at me and they're like, hey, you, you put a lot of pain on, you put a lot of blame on yourself for a lot of stuff in which you weren't a great guy, but you weren't the asshole that you think you were. And I'm like, no, I was. you know
all
it's
right.
it's hard not to take that on yourself. And I mean, I think that there are times that I know for a fact I put more blame on myself than anybody else does. And so I can imagine everything that you're saying. I can understand. And like you, I love hearing from my sons when they just call to say hi. Oh, and my sons, they will do everything they can to make me blush. They have those they have I need to find out who taught them that and kick that person right in the butt.
Right.
So, but um Meg, you've got a podcast. Can you tell us a little bid about that?
So the podcast is coming up. It's going to be basically called "Did Me Dirty," and it is this kind of thing that gangsters say to yourself: "Don't do me dirty." Um, but it's going to be all about this sharing the experience, and then educating people about what. what happened in that story. The red flags, the beginning story, all those things that come in, and red flags, how do you recognize them? What did I do wrong? What can you do right? Or what are you seeing right now in your relationship? And so I hope to not only have that kind of entertainment factor for people who are like wanting to know more about stalking and educational part, but then also have that for the victims out there who are thinking, is this happening to me? Is it, how can I get out of this? So, hopefully we'll be starting at like a 30-minute podcast, and then eventually bringing on experts and other guests, other victims, share their stories and their revelations and how they got out of it and what life looks like after on the other side. So we give people hope that there is life on the other side of this. 7 years was a long time. I didn't think it was ever going to end, but it did. And I wouldn't give up what I've had now. When I made it to my daughter's graduation, I just couldn't. I couldn't have been happier because I never thought I'd make it to her graduation. And so letting people know, like, don't give up on yourself, and it will be the overall message of the podcast.
Well, even though you went through hell, I am so glad that you made the decision not to. God, I never thought I'd say this. Thank God for COVID, and it gave you something to where it did not take your life. Literally, it kept you from taking your life. And so, for once in my life, I'm going to say thank God for COVID, because I think what you're doing is a beautiful thing, and
Thank
I
you.
absolutely adore what you're doing, and hopefully we can work together. They can find you at datingtipsbymeg.com.
Yep, datingtipsbymeg.com is my website. All my social handles are dating tips by Meg, and just all one word. And so you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, all those different places. It's dating tips
LinkedIn.
by Meg. Yep.
Yep, we got you on LinkedIn as well. So,
Yep.
Meg, is there anything else that you wanted to share with anybody before I let you go?
I would just say, son, thank you for having me on here today. And number two, like, just don't give up. That life is out there. Life is hard, no matter what you're going through, whenever you're struggling through, there is help out there. There are so many organizations, not just for dating violence and stalking and all these things, but there's people out there that want to help you. And don't give up on yourself, because there's life on the other side of whatever you're going through.
Um, she said it, look, everybody goes through hard stuff, and no, nobody knows exactly what you're going through. Everybody goes through different stuff. Everybody goes through things that are difficult. Okay. Other people have an idea, and the best thing in the world to do is maybe share what you've went through with somebody. Don't ever tell anybody that you know exactly what they're going through,
Right.
because even though you might, they don't want to hear that.
Right.
They will listen to your story. They will listen to what you went through. Let them, and I love the suggestion that you made. Let them come to it, come to the decision. Let them come to the realization, okay, yes, this person does understand a little more about me than I thought. But
Right.
don't ever go up to somebody and say, hey, I know exactly what you're going through. It's
Right.
not it's not healthy. It's just not. And you'll lose them. You'll lose them. And that's the first thing that's going to happen. But Meg, thank you very much. Um, I've really enjoyed this. It's been very educational, and I truly, truly cannot wait until we do some more stuff together.
Perfect. I was looking forward to it. I really appreciate you taking the time to interview today and understanding, like, all these different things are happening bad in the world, that we can start making them a little bit better, one person at a time and together. So,
No, that's the thing. People say all the time that, people ask me, what you want to say, you want to help everyone? Why
yeah,
not?
I do.
You know,
Yeah,
we, no,
exactly.
well, it's not possible. Well, it's not possible if we don't try. So let's try. Let's
Right.
give it a shot. There's been enough people who say it's not possible. What the hell? Let's make it possible. What do you think about
Let's
that?
do it. That's
All right.
right.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Introducing Shop, Click, and Pick, the simplest way to support those doing good. We understand that shopping is a necessity, and with a slight adjustment, you can make a huge difference for those in need. Here's how it works. Visit communitypayitforward.us and navigate to the Find Your Partners tab. Discover our verified giving partners, trusted allies ready to meet your needs. Shop with any partner that resonates with you. Click a picture of your receipt or invoice. Pick a mission partner you wish to support and use their QR code to send a receipt to us. Then all you have to do is sit back and enjoy your purchase, knowing you've made a meaningful change for someone in need. Community Pay It Forward amplifies your business's impact by sharing your story with those who require your services, rallying support for those who need us all. Because no one needs to go it alone when we all come together. One of the things that I always think of when I have a story, a guest like this, is I really think about how much I don't know about what's going on. Her story really brings to me the fact that there is so much more about what's going on out there that, you know, I haven't thought of or I haven't put any thought into, which is sad. It's not that I'm not one of those people who are trying to avoid thinking about situations like that, but it is sad that it takes sitting down with somebody who went through something like that for me to understand that we've got such a long way to go. I do find it very interesting, though, that once again, as always, what's the main thing that we heard to do for somebody? Listen. From show one to now, the main advice given is listen. I mean, I do kind of wish that there were other things that, we could do, but the most important thing is to sit down and listen. I want to ask everyone to please remember. First off, I want to thank Meg again for joining us. Such a beautiful person who went through such a horrible, horrible thing to come out, stand up, and do what she's doing. And I want to thank her with all of my heart for everything that she's doing to help people. You can find her again at datingtipsbymeg.com, datingtipsbymeg.com. Email her, datingtipsbymeg@gmail.com, datingtipsbymeg@gmail.com. Or you can also find her on LinkedIn, Meg Grett-Pratt. Meg Grett-Pratt. I mentioned it earlier, and I'm going to ask everyone to do me a favor, and you don't owe me any favors by any means, but I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. We talked about this last year, and I really want to bring it up again. I haven't decided if I'm going to have a show next week or not yet. But if we do, it's going to have a memorial theme to it for Memorial Day. These stores out here are making it hard not to go and get their best price ever. Do it on Sunday. Do it on Saturday. Let's remember what Monday is. Monday is a day for our heroes, to remember our heroes, those who lost their lives defending our way of life. We discussed this last year, and I'm just going to say it again. They don't care. Those families don't really care that you got a brand new mattress. So for people saying, come and get the greatest sale ever on our Memorial Day sale, they're doing a great disservice to the memory of our heroes. Personal thought, yeah. In my mind, this is one of the major holidays in this country. People have been fighting and clamoring for Christmas and Thanksgiving for stores to be closed. I think this day is just as important, if not more important, than either of those holidays. Because this is the day that we remember the reason why we have what we have in this country. Please think twice about going out and shopping on this day. Maybe walk into one of these stores prior to Monday and tell them, this ain't cool. This ain't cool. Now, if you're going to say, you know what, every veteran come in and we're going to give you something, every family member of someone who lost their lives, come on in and we're going to give you a free bed. You have something there. But just throwing your wares out there and using Memorial Day, yeah, that is my soapbox. And it's something I truly, truly do feel very strongly about. Memorial Day is about remembering those who lost their lives. And again, their families don't care that you're going to go out and get a brand new furniture set, or you're going to go out, you're going to get a new car, you're going to go out and they're without a family member. And these people, these businesses are using a day that we should focus on them, on their family members that lost their lives. They're using this day to sell their goods. Look, you already created Valentine's Day, okay? You already created a holiday for Valentine's Day. I have nothing against Valentine's Day. Absolutely nothing. But how about maybe the next weekend, the following weekend, maybe the following Monday, we have, hey, it's National Furniture, buy a new furniture day. Hell, I don't care. Do it on Tuesday of next week. Call it the Thank You Veterans Day sale. Tie in veterans somehow. But just to use this holiday to sell your goods, I think it's a disgrace. I do. I think it's a disgrace. A lot of people get mad at me on that too, and I don't care. I'm going to get mad at every time I see one of the commercials. There's one particular commercial out where a lady is sitting there acting like a drill sergeant to her team. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. All these women and men that died in service of our country. And they're going to put themselves on equal ground to sell you a couch. Again, my feeling. I apologize if I offended anybody, but you're not going to change my mind on this. Hey, you know what? If you have a story like Meg's and you would like to come on and you would like to join us, the QR code above is the best way to do that. Scan that QR code. Tell us your information. You know what? If you would like to join me on my Wednesday show and argue why Memorial Day is a great day to pimp your goods, let's talk. But you're going to have to be damn convincing. I'll tell you right now. If you, hey, look, if you are a vet, if you are a store owner who you lost somebody and you're using this day to as memory of him or her, and you're sitting there and saying, you know what, this was their favorite day, or this was their, fine. I'll back off from your store. But if you're just using this day, the importance of this day, to tell others we're equal to the men and women who died for this country, shame on you. Again, would you like to join us? QR code up in the corner, please. If you would like to get a hold of me, if you have anything that you would like to respond, send me a text, 970-909-0751, 970-909-0751. If you'd like to talk to me, just leave the text, say, hey, could you please give me a call? Let me know what it's about. I am very, very busy with other things that we got going on, so I don't always have a chance to answer the phone. But 970-909-0751, if you give me a call, I will do my best to call you back. If you want to get a hold of me in any other way, website is communitypayitforward.us, communitypayitforward.us, and you can always look on the navigation bar for Footprints Forward, where this show will appear. I want to thank you all very, very much. Again, I don't know if we're having a show on next Monday. But I want to thank all the families out there who have sacrificed a loved one. And I want to thank every veteran that has ever served our country. Thank you for all that you've done. Please remember to love somebody out there, because somebody out here loves you. Sorry. If you're not helping someone, you're hurting everyone. Please remember, no one has to go it alone when we all come together. Looking to make a difference with your shopping? Visit communitypayitforward.us. Select the mission or cause you want to support and scan the QR code. You have two options. Click the first link and browse our giving partners, or use the second link to tell us what you need, and we'll find the right partners for you. Shop with these partners and keep your receipt or invoice. Next, click a picture or simply upload a picture of your receipt to the portal in every form, adding your name and email address. Your purchase now turns into a donation to the mission you've chosen. Community Pay It Forward shares your business story with those in need of your services to rally support for those who need us all.